Why do we love cars that hate us? Cars that break down, cars whose repairs never seem to take. Cars that seem hostile to our attempts to keep them on the road. Why do we keep throwing good money after bad just so we can continue to enjoy the privilege of driving a 2001 Mercedes-Benz E320 Wagon? Commuting is bad enough without having a suspension that feels like you're riding in a rock tumbler stuck inside a washing machine that's getting railed by the Iron Giant. Just because every person you've ever been with has had commitment issues doesn't mean you need to cling like dryer lint to a Corvette that's been running rich off and on since the days you needed a college email address to join Facebook. Do you still need that Volvo you drove in high school? Do you really need an old Mustang that's nothing more than a crash diet plan for your wallet? Why do we do this? Why do we hold on to cars that don't serve us? I've wanted to talk about this for years, but haven't found the right opportunity to share my grand unifying theory, so I'll just share it here with you, if that's okay. And I invite you to debate me on it in the comments down below because I'll be in there, and please consider liking the video if you end up enjoying it. It helps us a lot. Okay, enough preamble. Let's get ranting. We can rant if we want to. We can send our best regards, because your friends don't rant, and if they don't rant, then they're not into cars. Why do we hold on to cars that actively take and take and take? Well, there are the obvious sentimental reasons, like, oh, it was my first car, or it was my dad's car, or it was passed down to me by my uncle grandpa. And while that's definitely a big part of it, I think the true reason goes a lot deeper than that. A lot deeper. I'm talking deep like I found this next to the gummy phalluses at Spencer's Gifts. Why do we love cars that hate us? My thesis, which is admittedly kind of ridiculous, but it's always been my thesis, is this. We love cars that hate us because they're the cars that teach us the most about life. This happens without our realizing it, but these cars reflect our coping mechanisms and force us to consider who we are and who we want to be. The longer we try to hold on, the more they force us to learn and grow, until the point comes that we finally decide to let go of the car and the lessons truly sink in. So let's go over how the cars do this. Alright, let's talk sentimentality and get it out of the way, because it's the clearest and most obvious reason for why we hold on to things we probably shouldn't. Sentimentality is valid, but it's also one of the more frustrating conditions of car ownership, because it asks you to ignore the raging crash out that's happening in whichever part of the brain governs logic. You know this car is unreliable and costing you a small nation's GDP, but the sunk cost of failing car ownership is less about dollars and cents than it is about the emotional equity we invest in our cars, and how we lose that investment the longer we try to keep them on the road. I think the enthusiast community holds on to this idea that any car worth having will bring struggle, and sticking with it through the struggle is how we prove we care. Tracking down the right exhaust, suspension kits, body kits, taking it in for engine tunes and transmission swaps, and road force tire balances. It all feels like progress, right? But then you start finding new patches of rust every time you strip a bolt. You discover the panels are leaking like a national security group chat and you can't find the source. You realize you're throwing money at the problem and come to the conclusion that it's not sustainable anymore. You love the car, but you have to let it go. And this is how we learn lesson number 1. Letting go isn't the same thing as giving up. The knowledge you gained and the memories you made are valuable, and they don't become worthless just because you didn't get everything right. And what the car meant to you doesn't evaporate once you decide to sell it. Maintaining an object is not a requirement to preserve the feelings and memories that object inspired, especially if the thing you're maintaining has become more trouble than it's worth. Memories of the past are not worth suffering in the present. Walking away isn't weakness, it isn't failure. When we end that relationship, leave that job, or sell that car, we're making a conscious choice not to be controlled by the fear of letting go. Because letting go of the past is the only way to make a new past that has every chance of being better than the one you were afraid to let go. And short of losing a loved one or being fired, the best way to learn this lesson is by loving a car you just can't save. Okay, say you want to get rid of the albatross of a car you're driving, but you can't afford to get rid of it. So you do your best to keep it on the road because it's ultimately cheaper to just wrench on it as best you can to keep it on the road a little while longer. You're not in a position to finance a new car outright, or even something used, and you tell yourself, hey, beggars can't be choosers. So you learn to love the car. Maybe you convince yourself this is not a decision compelled by circumstance, but by a choice you're actively making, because trading up is the coward's way out. And maybe you do really love the car, even as it's showing its age like an ant wearing a crop top and cut-off jeans post-divorce. It's giving you all sorts of engine trouble, and the suspension is like jumping on a trampoline made of cafeteria silverware. You feel miserable. Less than. You feel undignified as you roll around town in your 850R, and you pray this isn't the day you get gapped by a Tercel from the first Bush administration. But this car you love, that seemingly hates you, is also serving up a valuable lesson. Lesson number 2. You're better at adaptation than you think. Driving a failing car you're forced to keep alive shows that you're adaptable, and there's dignity in adaptation, because it shows you're capable of surviving harsher economic conditions than someone who never got those life skills, who never learned what it was like to go without, and never had to figure out how to make do with what they had. Okay, it might be dramatic, but standing defiant in the face of hardship, that's where dignity lives, my guy. And I would argue that's a greater expression of human dignity than the day trader in his caviar coupe who can't be bothered to tip his waiter. You are basically a living, breathing Dusty Rhodes promo from the mid-1980s. The kind that talked about the value and dignity of hard work, where grand statements were punctuated with words like baby and daddy. Look at these hands. These aren't baby bottom smooth. These got the calluses of the working man, baby. They turn wrenches and hold nails and wield hammers. And that's where dignity lives, daddy. Look, I can't do Dusty Rhodes, even though I have a lisp too. It's harder to recreate a lisp when you already have one. I don't get how that works. Like a potential partner who plays hard to get, although I don't think that's really a thing we should assume people are doing anymore, since no is a complete sentence, a car that openly hates us provides an exhilarating opportunity to overcome the insurmountable. It becomes part of our own self-narrative that we were able to loosen that rusted bolt, do that ludicrous engine swap, and drive it for 2 years without blowing a single head gasket, because we not only define ourselves through our accomplishments, but discover who we are in the first place through what we find ourselves capable of doing. So we pick the difficult car, and we justify it to anybody who will listen. It doesn't run the way every other car does. It's loud in places it shouldn't be. It stutters like an old film projector. It takes corners with the kind of over-exaggerated drama of an improv class final. You have to master its quirks and tame it, like a wild, unbroken horse. It pulls hard to the left and fights you on first to second. It gets jumpy from second to third, and then you gotta go from fourth straight to sixth, because if you touch fifth, it goes all maple glazed donut. Don't ask me what that means, I don't know. It made sense when I wrote it. Yeah, the car's a struggle bus, but if something made us bleed, it must have been worth bleeding for, right? Well, no. Because if we stick with that car long enough, we'll eventually learn lesson number 3. Pain doesn't confer meaning. If the only value a car has is that it lets you martyr yourself for keeping it on the road, then just let it go, dude. Now, yes, of course, be proud of your accomplishments. Tell your story. Let people know how much effort you put into this car. Just don't turn it into the struggle Olympics. Don't let this trauma bond you've formed with this car turn you into somebody who doesn't see the value in simple function. Because the reality is that not every challenge can be conquered, and you have to learn to be okay with that. No matter how far you got on the car, whether you were able to keep it running for 6 months or 6 years, hell, whether you were able to even get it running at all. You've undoubtedly grown and learned from the experience, and what you learn and how you grow from it confer greater meaning than the struggle itself. You've been dating someone for 6 months, and while they're not generally your type, you feel like this could become something more. Except they have bad hygiene, they don't keep plans, they get really snippy with waitstaff, their communication isn't great, they're really insecure, but also like to passively judge people. Men and women all over the world have come to the realization that they're dating a person who isn't right for them, and that while their partner hasn't been violent or unfaithful, the relationship really should end sooner rather than later. But they don't leave because of one magical word: potential. They see what this person could be on the other side of whatever relationship problems they're having. But the only thing sustaining this hope is a diet of delusion. Oh, I could change her. No, you can't, Jeremy. She's a whole-ass person, and you knew what she was like when you started dating her. Reality doesn't have an attribute slider on people. Rick Sanchez isn't real. He can't make you one. Now, by all means, grow together, but you can't be out here trying to change people. And the same is true of a car. Oh, you can change a whole hell of a lot more about a car than you can about a person, and a car won't have any say in the matter. Except, I mean, there are limitations, obviously. You can't do everything you want to a car, not without infinite resources that most average people don't have. And so, like that relationship, a car needs to be about more than just the potential of what it could be. You have to meet the car where it is and go from there. Not project a vision of a hypothetical future that may or may not ever exist. Oh, with a little more elbow grease, it'll be perfect. Once I get an LS in there, or once I get a Nag 1 transmission, or once I get the new coilovers. You know, there's always going to be some problem that prevents the potential from ever being realized. Because if only I had the money, if only I had the time, if only they still made the parts. It's a car that's always one service away from getting back on track. And the entire time, the car is throwing codes, spilling oil, overheating like a menopausal camp counselor. And you're just lying to yourself that this car you love will actually reciprocate that love someday. But you don't love this car. You don't love what it is. You love your idea of what it could be. More than making a good car that runs, you want to prove to everybody that you bet on the right horse. And, well, lesson number 4. Not everything has the potential to be more than it is. And you have to learn how to meet things where they are, to accept that while there are things you can change, and even maybe improve, You can't expect that all aspects of life are fully customizable, any more than you can customize a person to be your perfect mate, or modify a car to such an extent that it can never disappoint you. Again, you can certainly come closer with a car than you can with a person, but you'll be far better off the sooner you learn that there isn't always potential to be realized, and that's okay. Behind every man with main character syndrome is an RX-7 with more heat soak than the front row at a Benson Boone concert. Because having a car that works is easy. Well, it's not easy, you still have to do the maintenance. But having a car that's reliable, there's no character or distinction in that. Having a car that's reliable is cool, but you know what's cooler? Having a story about the time it stranded you off the side of 183, and you had to walk 2 miles to a gas station and ran into some guys fist fighting outside the Sunoco because the one guy bunged the other guy's mom. A difficult car builds character, even if it doesn't confer character. We fortify our identity by surrounding ourselves with things that are unique to us, that make us stand out, that we know won't be replicable by other people within our circle. Nobody else in our circle is going to have that stuttering RX-7, so I get to be the guy with the RX-7. I get to be the guy with the cool, classic car that's always working on his car, and who's even cooler because he knows how. It offers you the ability to control your identity and perhaps even how you're perceived. Except, not really, because one day that RX-7 isn't going to run anymore. And then you're going to have to learn lesson number 5. If your personality revolves around a thing, it's not a personality. It's a codependent relationship masquerading as an identity. You're the guy with the RX-7, but what happens when you don't have the RX-7 anymore? Who are you then? Cars are built to hold you, not your sense of self. They can accentuate a pre-existing personality. They can add flair, like a mask or a really cool jacket. But when you seed your entire self-worth into a car, keeping it on the road becomes more urgent, because at that point, you aren't maintaining the car anymore. You're maintaining yourself through the car. You're preserving the person that car allows you to be, rather than discovering who you could be without it. You think your car is putting you on a pedestal, when really it's just putting you behind bars. It's the most expensive hostage situation you'll probably ever be in. Knock on wood. And you're better than that. You're more singular and individual than that. And by fighting to keep this car on the road, you do learn that lesson, but only by failing to keep it on the road and accepting that you need to let it go can that lesson be actualized. Now, of course, there are any number of other reasons that people keep cars that hate them. Maybe they really do just love the car. They love the way it drives. They don't mind that it's always breaking down. They enjoy working on it. Maybe it's a car that they've always wanted to own and now they own it and they're never going to let it go. Car culture tells us that virtually every car has somebody for whom that's their dream car. But I wanted to investigate some of the less common reasons that people might still decide to hold on to a car that doesn't treat them well, despite their best efforts. So yeah, the theory is kind of, it's kind of a hippie theory, but I truly do believe it, and have for a long time, because it kind of explains why I held on to Betty for as long as I did, even after the point where it stopped making sense. If it ever made sense in the first place. Cars can help us discover who we are, who we'd like to be, and who we never want to be again. They teach us about ourselves and about our lives, how we live, how we cope, and how we move forward. Loving a car that hates you means loving with delusion, stubbornness, pride, fear, optimism, and irrationality. And to be fair, that's how people love. These aspects are part of the many shades love takes in the heart of the yearning traveler. Because love craves camaraderie. Love stands in the paths of solitude and brings us into a larger world. And we learn to love more fully in letting go, which is easy to say if you aren't the one doing it. But loving a car enough to let it go once it no longer serves you means you've internalized the lessons it was teaching you by making you hate it in the first place. Thank you for giving me your time. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving us a like, subscribing, or even sharing the video so we can get a discussion going. Any of those will really help our channel. And if you want more videos just like this, consider joining our Patreon. It is the absolute best way to support this channel and allow us to continue bringing you the most unique automotive content you'll find anywhere on the internet. I look forward to seeing you in the comments. Be on the lookout for me. My screen name is Limited Time Roman. I'd love to get your thoughts on the thesis and what your own theories and experiences with unruly cars are. It really is one of the highlights of my week. Last but not least, for keychains, bumper stickers, and license plate frames, check out our Zazzle store linked in the description. But for shirts and other merch, check out our Fourth Wall store linked below. For every order to our Fourth Wall store, I'll send you a personalized thank you video. Thank you again for watching, and have an incredible rest of your week.